Hello, how are you? I'm not sure if this is going to be a ramble about an author that I like or a book review. Probably some sort of strange combination of both, but I'll be as quick as I can. This is the last book that I read before Harry Potter took over my life again for a couple of days, and I might talk about Harry Potter at some point in a video. I'm not sure if it's fair to talk about the script when I'm probably not going to see the play, so I'm not sure, let me know. But I want to talk about Haruki Murakami, specifically this book, Sputnik Sweetheart. This is the second Murakami book I own and the third one I've read. I received the Wind Up Bird Chronicle for Christmas, and maybe this time last year-ish I got Norwegian Wood from the library. I put it in a video and I read it, I really enjoyed it, and I fully intend to read all of Murakami's books. I think there are about a dozen, and he's in his 60s. His most recent book was published in 2013. I assume he's still writing. I hope he's still writing. This book is much shorter than the Wind Up Bird Chronicle and much shorter than Norwegian Wood. This was first published in 1999. If you've never heard of Murakami and you're looking for an entry point, I would suggest Norwegian Wood. It was kind of the first of his books to get very popular, and he spoke about the fact that he wrote it to be realistic and relatable and accessible to a large number of people, and then that success sort of allowed him to springboard off into a world of surrealism and all those other things that we associate Murakami with. Murakami is a Japanese writer. All his books are set in Japan as far as I know, and he has 3 translators that he always uses. This one was translated by Philip Gabriel into English because I don't speak or read Japanese, needless to say. This story is about a man named Kay, or we only ever get to know him as Kay. He's our first person narrator, he's the protagonist. He's a primary school teacher. His life is rather uneventful, but he has a friend called Samira. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. They got to know each other in college, but she dropped out to pursue her dream of becoming a writer, and they stayed in touch. And this is a story of unrequited love. He is in love with her, and throughout the course of this novel, Samira falls in love with an older woman. So Kay is in love with his friend and doesn't tell her, and his friend is in love with this older woman and is completely overcome with it because she's never had an attraction to anyone before. So she is also coming to terms with that. I said this book takes place in Japan. There's also a section that takes place in Greece, which is very interesting. And like much of Murakami's writing that I've read thus far, it's rooted in realism. He names these Japanese cities and these suburbs as if you know them, which he does, I don't. His main characters tend to have very mundane lives and do very normal things, and they're maybe lonely or they're bored. And then you get these moments that are like dreams brought to life on paper, and you either get sucked into it, which I'm pretty sure the majority of people who read Murakami do, or you maybe have an aversion to it because it's not realistic. So it's magical realism. It's where reality meets fantasy and gets woven into the narrative seamlessly and beautifully. And it happens in this novel. It happens in all sorts of wild and wonderful ways in the Wind Up Bird Chronicle. And in this book in particular, it's really interesting because Samira, who I said was an aspiring writer, at one point writes about the fact that as a writer you're not supposed to write about your dreams because it's not good writing, and it's hard to pull that off as a writer, if you will. So it's a little bit ironic, it's a little bit playful, because so much of Murakami's writing is like a dream. Something I'm curious to uncover as I read more of Murakami's stories, I'm pretty sure that all of his novels have male protagonists, and I'm pretty sure they all involve some sort of relationship with women. These books can be quite explicit. They're not for children. There are all sorts of relationships going on, but I'm interested to read more and discover what, if anything, all the women in these novels have. And I was reading a really interesting interview that Murakami did a number of years ago in the Paris Review. I'll just read it instead of trying to paraphrase it. So the interviewer says, your novels are always in first person. In each of them a man cycles between a variety of sexually charged relationships with women. He is generally passive vis-a-vis these women who seem to function as manifestations of his fears and fantasies. Murakami says, "In my books and stories, women are mediums, in a sense. The function of the medium is to make something happen through herself. It's a kind of system to be experienced. The protagonist is always led somewhere by the medium, and the visions that he sees are shown to him by her." That's completely true in Sputnik Sweetheart, because at one point Kay is giving us writing. And it's not his writing, it's Samira's writing. And really for most of this book we get little glances into his life, and obviously we learn that he's in love with her, we learn that he's a primary school teacher, and we get to see a couple of other relationships he has and how they kind of exist. But generally the bulk of this story of two women and that relationship, and thinking about writing and thinking about dreams and thinking about kind of alternate realities almost. Is that a spoiler? Generally all of those things are Samira's story, but we're told her story through this middleman, quite literally. And that's quite practical in the plot, because she's not actually there for a lot of the later pages of this book. But it's almost frustrating because she's so interesting, and she wears men's clothes, and she does weird things, and she writes and writes like Kerouac, and she's just fascinating, and you can see why he's in love with her. But also it's kind of her story, and you sometimes wonder why this man is telling you the story. And similarly in the Wind Up Bird Chronicle, there's a husband, and the husband is your first person narrator, and his wife has all these secrets, and you sort of think that there's an alternate version of this book, which is her half of the story. It's interesting to me to think about gender in these books, and I have never read any other Japanese novels, and I don't think Murakami has much of an interest in Japanese novels. He certainly name checks a lot of famous American authors from the 50s and 60s in interviews. But if there's any Murakami experts out there, let me know what you think about his presentation of men and women and what we're supposed to take from it. Is it a case of just writing what you know in terms of making your first person narrator a man because you're a man? In fact, in that same Paris Review interview, Murakami talks about the protagonist being his twin brother who was kidnapped at birth. So they're the same and they're identical, but they've gone in two separate ways, and his protagonist's voice allows him to kind of explore that alternate version of himself. So maybe that's part of it. Maybe I'm just too hung up on gender. Other things I've noticed at this point, and it has been ages since I read Norwegian Wood, so I should probably go back to it. Music is invoked quite a lot. There's a lot of classical music references that went straight over my head in this book, and obviously Norwegian Wood, the clues in the title there. The writing is very musical in itself sometimes, actually. Other things that, if you like books that take you to mysterious, confusing places, but then bring you back, bring all those characters back and explain it at the end. If you like conclusions, then you should really steer away from these books, because sometimes trying to grasp meaning at the end of these books is just like trying to grip some fog. So there you go. I hope this was interesting. Someone commented on one of my videos a few months ago and said, you only ever read books that are written in English by English speaking authors, and that's not true. I mean, it's mostly true, but I think that's also quite common for someone who's grown up as a native English speaker. I just think it's very common. We're lucky to have lots of wonderful authors who write in the language we know best, so I don't think that's uncommon. But I do read books by authors from other places, and I am hoping to get through all of Murakami's books eventually. There's no time limit on this little goal. Sputnik Sweetheart, published by Vintage. They do all these beautiful minimalist editions that I really like in the red and the black and the white. So check it out. There will be a book depository affiliate link in the description as always, and also there will be a link to my poetry collection, Sea Legs and Other Stories. Thank you if you've downloaded it. If you haven't, I'm taking it offline in the next week or so, so this is your last chance to download it, so I'll link that as well. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you're reading, and if you have any thoughts on anything that I just rambled about for the last however many minutes. I will see you soon. See you at Summer in the City. See ya.